Good evening, and welcome to the Nurses Specialized in Wound, Ostomy, and Continence Canada Continuing Education webinar, which is called Canadian Ostomy Reimbursement and the Disability Tax Credit. My name's Catherine Harley, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of NSWOC. And joining me this evening as presenters are two of my colleagues, Erin Rajathi. Erin is a CNA certified NSWOC, and she is the Wound Resource Coordinator for the Southeast LHIN, just for the area just east of Kingston, Ontario. And she's also the core program leader for community engagement for NSWOCC. Also joining us is Rosemary Hill, who's also a CNA certified nurse specialized in wound ostomy and continence. And Rosemary is a wound ostomy and continence clinician at Lionsgate Hospital and Vancouver Coastal Health in British Columbia. She is the chair of the BC Provincial Ostomy Committee, and she's also a member of the Joint Advocacy Committee between Ostomy Canada Society and Nurses Specialized in Wound Ostomy and Continence, and has been a contributor over the past few years. So welcome to the other presenters. I would also like to welcome all of you, whether you're guests from Ostomy Canada Society or NSWOCs or industry partners or the public. We look forward to having you participate with us this evening. We are giving our presentations live. We are not recorded. And so we'll be going through all the presentations first, and then we will have a live question and answer at the very end of the presentation. We encourage you to send questions. I know we're also running on Facebook Live, so you can send a question through Facebook Live or type it into the Q&A box, which is at the top of your navigation bar, and we'll get to your questions at the end of the presentations. So we have quite a bit of material to get through, and really what our hope is that when we finish this presentation, you will have a comprehensive view of funding that can be accessed by province across Canada, and that you will really understand that there are a lot of differences between provinces, and there are also some federal programs that we will highlight, and we will also make sure you know about the disability tax credit and how to fill out the forms. So there's quite a bit of information that we're going to be going through. Some of it is higher level, some of it you'll find in more detail. We've tried to synthesize, and we will be as concise as we can. So starting off, the Canadian statistics, there are 70,000, approximately 70,000 individuals living with an ostomy in Canada, and there are about 13,000 new ostomy surgeries performed annually. And for those of you who know what an ostomy is, which I'm sure the majority do, but for those of you who don't, an ostomy is an abdominal opening that allows the collection of human waste into a pouch or other device. And about 80% of people living with ostomy will experience some type of complication within 2 years after surgery. And that's why it's really important to have access to nurses specialized in wound, ostomy, and continence, because it is proven that by having a specialized nurse, it can help prevent complications through the pre-op consultation, appropriate stoma marking, post-operative education, and mental health support. And when we were preparing for this presentation, it's very apparent that there's no single national health system. There are 14 single payer, universal, and public systems. So you can't just put one recipe against all ostomy reimbursement. You have to really drill down on a province by province, territory, and federal level. And so I think that's the approach that we've tried to do. And I think that it will take more than a 1 hour presentation to really get a grasp on it. So we will be recording this presentation, and we will post it on the NSWOCC website for your viewing afterwards. I would like to use as the basis of this presentation a study, the financial impact of living in Canada with an ostomy, a cross-sectional survey by LeBlanc, Heerschap, Martins, Butt, Weisenfeld, and Wu. This was published in the JWOCN in 2019. And when you look at the conclusions of this study, we know that living with an ostomy impacts Canadians' financial well-being. We know that it depends on where you live. It can change the resources that you get, whether it's access to an NSWOC or access to funding. There are considerable differences in funding across the provinces, such as flat rate funding, funding based on percentage of cost, income-based funding, and no funding at all. So despite the different funding bundles, out-of-pocket expenses are a reality, and they're pretty much the same across the provinces. Most people are spending at least $500 minimum out of pocket after they receive the reimbursement available to them within their province, and it goes up from there. So findings suggest that having access to an NSWOC can also help to reduce the complication and aid in saving costs. So those were the main takeaways. And if any of you are interested in the study, you can email office@nswoc.ca and we'll make sure you get a copy in the emails at the end of the presentation. And so looking at the ostomy supplies, what we want to do is try to help you reduce the amount that you're spending out of pocket, because it really isn't funny having an out of pocket situation. When you think of it, you look at an average Canadian, an individual, one person might spend $40 a year on toilet paper to be able to perform a basic human need. Someone living with an ostomy is spending $1,000 upwards to $2,400 to $2,500 a year to be able to perform that same basic need. And so it's very important that we work towards achieving some level of universal reimbursement, if possible. With our structure, as I mentioned, that may be difficult. But we are working actively to try to address funding issues. We need to move from financial stress and anxiety to adequately supported people living with an ostomy. And so Ostomy Canada Society, right now led by Ian McNeil, Disability Tax Committee led by Ann Durkee, and NSWOC Canada came together and we formed an advocacy committee, and a lot of NSWOCs participate on this committee and people living with ostomies, and we're actively reaching out and advocating and making sure that our voice is getting heard. We have had some impact in Ontario about 4 years ago. There's been reimbursement added in PEI and Quebec in more recent years. There's a letter writing campaign going on in New Brunswick right now, and we will continue that and make sure that we're communicating at all levels of government to make sure that the voices are being heard, that we need ostomy reimbursement. In this presentation, we're addressing publicly funded programs. We're not getting into third-party insurance at this point in time because we just don't have enough time in an hour. And it also, in preface to starting to review the provinces, it's important to understand how each province reimburses for the money spent and how receipts are issued and accepted by the province. And everybody who's working with reimbursement really needs to get the receipt piece sorted out up front, because we have found that the guidelines and rules vary by province. And so we're going to start in Newfoundland and we're going to go right across the country, and then we'll end up federally, and then the disability tax credit. So here we go. Newfoundland and Labrador. The ostomy reimbursement is under the prescription drug program. To be eligible, you have to be a resident of Newfoundland and Labrador who holds a Department of Health and Community Services prescription card. And the ostomy reimbursement that they have is available to those who have 65 plus plan guaranteed income supplement, which is known as GIS, old age security benefits, or They are enrolled in the foundation plan, which is income support benefits through the Department of Advanced Education and Skills, or for children, it's under Child, Youth, and Family Services. And you can also be eligible if you're an individual who requires supervised care. The types of ostomies covered are a permanent functioning colostomy, ileostomy, or urostomy. For authorization, the client must be enrolled in either that foundation plan or the 65 plus plan prior to coverage authorization. The access to supplies, they're purchased through a third party. The supplier's original receipts must be submitted to the government in order to be paid. The coverage for our ostomy supplies is 100% for those who are in the foundation plan, 75% for ostomy subsidy program for people in 65 plus, or 0 if you're not enrolled in either plan. So you do need to be in one of the plans. And as of November 2018, residents can apply to the Special Assistance Program where coverage has client contribution based on income and cost of supplies. Moving from Newfoundland into Prince Edward Island, for eligibility, you have to be a permanent resident of PEI defined by the Drug Cost Assistance Act. You must have a valid PEI health card. You must have filed your most recent income tax return in PEI, and you must be registered with the Ostomy Supplies Program. The types of ostomies covered are a permanent ostomy, urostomy, colostomy, or ileostomy. The ostomy supplies that they have eligible for coverage in PEI are skin wafers, ostomy pouches, adhesive removers, skin barrier wipes, stoma powders and pastes, barrier rings, and ostomy belts. In order to apply for the funding, a healthcare professional, which can be an NSWOC, nurse practitioner, or physician, submits a healthcare provider ostomy supplies program registration form on the patient's behalf. And in this presentation, I have put a link to that form, and it's under the resources at the back of the presentation. The patient must also complete and submit an ostomy supplies program patient application form, which is required to verify income with the Canadian Revenue Agency. Depending on your household income, you may be eligible for up to 100% coverage to assist with the out-of-pocket costs of eligible ostomy supplies to a maximum of $2,400 per full program year, which runs from July 1 to June 30th. But if you apply past July 1, your eligible amount will be prorated to reflect the percentage of time remaining until June 30th. And this is a table that shows you the annual household income, which is net income, and the eligible coverage going, and the lowest is the 20,000 threshold, you get 100%, and then it moves downward from there until you get to 100,000 or greater in net income, and you get 60% coverage. So that's how that works. I also wanted to point out that you have to pay for your supplies at a local pharmacy, home health, or home health center and request a detailed invoice listing all supplies purchased. You have to make your claims through the ostomy supply claim submission form. Again, the link's on the back of the presentation. If you have private insurance, you can submit a detailed invoice for supplies along with the insurer statement showing the remaining out-of-pocket expense. If you do not have private insurance, you can submit a detailed invoice for your supplies. And if you go to the health PEI PharmaCare website, you can see where you submit your claims and all of the submission forms. They also have a stipulation that all eligible ostomy supplies must be purchased in Canada, so you cannot order them out of country. New Brunswick. The ostomy funding is under Social Development and Health Services. To be eligible, the Department of Social Development clients and their dependents who hold a valid white card indicating supplementary in the basic health eligibility section, or there's a capital OS for ostomy supplies in the additional health eligibility section. Department of Social Development clients who hold a valid yellow health card that indicates uppercase Y under the OTH in the valid only for box. Quite complicated, but that's how it's written. And clients must not have any other medical coverage in order to be receive full benefits. This program covers the colostomy, ileostomy, or urostomy. The authorizers are NSWOCs, nurse practitioners or physicians, and the access to supplies, they can be purchased through third-party suppliers. Brand name products are only considered when generic products are not available or do not meet the client's needs. And the client buys products and submits the original prescription receipts. The coverage is 100% for clients with special needs who qualify for assisted health care under Section 4.4 of the Family Income Security Act and regulations, and they have to meet the eligibility criteria that I outlined before, and it's 0% for the general public. We have work to do there. We have a letter writing campaign going on, and we are doing our best to move the agenda for enhanced reimbursement in this province. Nova Scotia. It's under the Boarding, Transportation and Ostomy Program, Government of Nova Scotia, Department of Health and Wellness. Eligibility is our Nova Scotia residents holding a valid Nova Scotia health card, cancer patients with a gross annual income of less than $25,000 per year, 65 years of age. There's no prescription drug coverage under any other plan or program. If you want to be eligible for the ostomy program, you pay an annual premium based on household income. And the under 65 years of age would have to be on long-term care pharmacare plan. It covers colostomy, ileostomy, or urostomy. And the authorizers, it's assessment and authorization by a physician. And the supplies are purchased through third-party suppliers and selected from the government's approved supply list. The coverage is 100% for cancer patients with annual family incomes less than $25,500 a year, those enrolled in the under 65 long-term care pharmacare plan, or clients enrolled in seniors pharmacare program not covered by private health insurance. Clients with income above $25,500, the premiums are charged based on income. And you can see here that single seniors earning under $22,000 don't pay a premium, but those who earn $22,986 to $35,000 pay up to $424 per year as a premium, and couples with combined income of between $26,817 and $40,000 will pay a reduced premium of less than $424 per year. And then moving on to Quebec. Quebec, the REGI, or the Quebec Health Insurance Board, the eligibility is a Quebec resident holding a valid Quebec health insurance card. The type of ostomy covered, surgery that has resulted in a permanent or temporary functioning colostomy, ileostomy, or urostomy. And the authorizers, the assessment and authorization is done by a physician. Supplies are purchased through third-party suppliers, and there is no approved supply or vendor list. The coverage is a fixed grant of $800 per temporary ostomy, which is 2 equal installments. And you'll notice that not every province has coverage for temporary ostomies, and this is one province that does. The coverage is $1,228 for a permanent ostomy, which is directly paid to the client, and the clients registered under Quebec's last resort financial assistance program are fully reimbursed for any purchase over the annual amount of $1,228. And now I'm going to turn over to Erin, and she will address the reimbursement in Ontario.
Thank you, Kathy. So in Ontario, the primary reimbursement program for ostomy is the Assistive Devices Program run under the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. Anybody who resides in Ontario with a valid Ontario Health Insurance Plan, otherwise known as OHIP, is covered. Types of ostomies covered from this program are permanent functioning ostomy or temporary ostomies where the reversal is scheduled greater than 6 months. So if surgery is scheduled less than that, then there is no reimbursement from this program. And it does require a physician or nurse practitioner to authorize it. Do you want to advance the slide? Perfect, thank you. Access to supplies is actually quite simple. So there are no approved vendors anymore, and people are free to purchase from any supplier. The province does provide a fixed grant of $975 per ostomy. It's paid directly to the person in 2 installments per year. Those who are on another publicly funded or financial program, Ontario Works, Ontario Disability Support Program, or Assistance to Children with Severe Disabilities, are entitled to $1,300, again paid in 2 installments, and they are free to use that money with any vendor of their choosing. There are another couple of options in Ontario. There's a program run by the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services. It's known as the Extended Health Benefit. And this is really intended for ODSP recipients who have higher health costs. It's largely for the people who are transitioning from ODSP onto another method of income, such as CPP. And it's for those who are no longer eligible because their income is too high and they have high health costs. So to qualify, you do need to have been on ODSP and you are now transitioning off due to receiving CPP, where you've found employment and stuff like that. So when that transition happens, your income reduction is greater than the ODSP amount, you would no longer be eligible for ODSP. And this would, you would be able to apply for this one. So an example of this would be, I've provided a good example. Jane has started receiving $1,100 in CPP, monthly disability benefits, and before that she was receiving less from ODSP. So the difference in the amount, which would be $47 in this example, is considered excess income. So for people who are transitioning and have excess income, or they're making more, but their costs of health needs exceed that excess income, they can actually reach back out to their caseworker at ODSP and apply for extended health benefits to continue covering the high costs of the medical devices. And then, so this is just continued. So you can see that her excess income was $75, yes, and her monthly costs are $100 per month. Therefore, she would receive extended benefit to help cover the difference. On top of that, there are municipal programs. For this presentation, I've only included Ottawa and City of Toronto, but I do encourage people to reach out to their own municipality. In Ontario, there is regulation that municipal governments are expected to actually help fund high costs associated with medical needs. In the City of Ottawa, it's called Essential Health and Social Supports Program. And this is for people who can't afford to pay out of pocket despite being on other provincial program or publicly funded programs. It's very much an individualized assessment. I was actually on the phone with them yesterday, and even people who do make a substantial amount of money and aren't on any publicly funded financial assistance, but also have a high debt load can actually be entitled. So this would be a great resource for people with temporary ostomies who don't get access through ADP. City of Toronto, similar thing. They will cover temporary and permanents, and they'll cover the temporaries up to the 6 months, at which point they would flip over to the assistive device program. And then same with permanent, they'll cover up to 3 months until ADP kicks in, but they'll also actually go back and look at that other 25% if the person can't afford it. They're quite different all over the province. And again, it's very much individualized. So I would always encourage looking into local supports.
Okay, thank you, Erin. And now we've gone up to Ontario, and we're going to go across the West. And starting in Manitoba, we have the Manitoba Ostomy Program. It's eligible to Manitoba residents who are registered for the Manitoba Ostomy Program through the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority. The types of ostomies, whether you have a permanent or temporary with no time limit, functioning colostomy, ileostomy, or urostomy. The assessment and authorization can be done by an NSWOC, and the access to purchase supplies is done through the province's HSC Materials Handling Program. The coverage is 100% for ostomy supplies. All ostomy supplies are ordered through this materials handling program at 0% copayment, a very strong program. Then Saskatchewan, Aids to Daily Living, SAIL, the Drug Plan and Extended Benefits Ostomy Program. It's eligible to Saskatchewan residents holding a valid Saskatchewan Health Services number. It covers surgery that's resulted in a permanent or temporary, no time limit, functioning colostomy, ileostomy, or urostomy. The assessment and authorization can be done by an NSWOC, and the supplies can be purchased through a third-party supplier, and there's no approved supply or vendor list. The coverage is 50% reimbursement for ostomy supplies, but 100% for patients who are registered under the paraplegia program. Alberta Aids to Daily Living, or AADL benefits program. It's eligible to Alberta residents holding an Alberta Health Card insurance plan card. The types of ostomies are chronic, permanent, functioning colostomy, ileostomy, or urostomy. A temporary ostomy not expected to have a reversal within 6 months of the original surgery, and pediatric clients and clients with esophagectomy, cecostomy, or fistula. The authorizers can be authorized by an NSWOC, and the supplies are purchased through the province's approved vendor and supply list. The coverage is again based on household income. And households making less than the following amounts receive 100% reimbursement. So it has to be under these amounts. So single taxable incomes less than $20,970. A couple with no children with taxable income less than $33,240. Parents and taxable income are less than $39,250. Those making more than amounts listed above receive 75% coverage, and clients pay 25% of the cost of the program benefits up to a maximum of $500 per family per benefit year, which is July 1 to June 30th. And then we move on to British Columbia and the PharmaCare program. This is eligible to people who are BC residents registered for the FAIR PharmaCare program. They must have a valid BC Care card and have filed income tax for the past 2 years for the FAIR PharmaCare program. Surgery that has resulted in a permanent or temporary with no time limit functioning colostomy, ileostomy, or urostomy can be approved. And the authorizers, interestingly enough, the clients can enroll online without a medical practitioner or a prescription. Access to supplies, they can be purchased through the province's Ministry of Health approved vendor and supply list, which is currently under revision with NSWOC input. And as I mentioned in the introductions, Rosemary is the chair of the Provincial Ostomy Committee. And so they are quite well organized, and they have NSWOCs who participate in this committee. As far as the coverage goes, I think this table really explains it well. It's based on net family income, starting less than 15,000 and then moving up to over 30,000. And I think the best way to navigate this chart is to take a look at the bottom boxes. So for the net family income less than 15,000, you're getting 100% coverage. And then as your income goes up, you pay 30%. And then when you reach a family maximum, you end up getting 100%. So it really is dependent on this family income. And because there is a deductible involved, and you can see here that the people have to pay a deductible, the deductible is the specified amount of money that the insured person has to pay before the insurance company will pay the claim. So, so that is a very important aspect of this particular coverage program. And then we move up to the Yukon with chronic disease and disability benefits program. So you have to be a Yukon resident holding a valid Yukon healthcare card. They cover chronic permanent functioning colostomy, ileostomy, or urostomy. Temporary were not listed. The clients need to be assessed by an NSWOC, nurse practitioner, or physician. And the access to supply is through third-party suppliers, and there's no approved supply or vendor list. And as far as coverage, it's 100% for clients registered with the Chronic Disease and Benefits Program, and 0 for the general public. And then the Northwest Territories Extended Health Benefits Program. Northwest Territory residents are eligible if they hold a valid health card of the Northwest Territories registered for the Extended Health Benefits Program. The following ostomies are covered: permanent or temporary with no time limit, functioning colostomy, ileostomy, or urostomy. The clients must be assessed by an NSWOC nurse practitioner or physician. And the supplies are accessed through third-party suppliers. There's no approved supply or vendor list. The coverage is 100% for prescribed supplies for seniors older than 60 who are permanent residents of the Northwest Territories and non-Indigenous with the Chronic Disease and Benefits Program, and 0% for the general public. And so that is a high-level overview of what's available in each province. And again, you really need to drill down a bit further in order to better understand, but it kind of gives you an idea that authorizers are different, how products are accessed can be different, the amount of coverage is different. So there's a lot of discrepancies and inequality from province to province. And now we're going to move into the federal programs. And we're going to start with the military, the National Defense, and the Canadian Armed Forces Supplemental Healthcare. So in order to qualify for ostomy reimbursement, you must be a member of the Canadian Armed Forces. The types of ostomies covered: permanent or temporary with no time limit, functioning, colostomy, ileostomy, or urostomy. Clients must be assessed and authorized by a physician. And the supplies are purchased through third-party suppliers, and there's no approved supply or vendor list. And the coverage is 100% when authorized by a physician. The RCMP, Public Health Service Plan, 100% coverage when authorized by a physician. Non-insured health benefits, First Nations, Inuit, and Metis people. As you know, NSWOC has a wound, ostomy, and continence Indigenous health core program, and we have a very active group that meets monthly. And they have done several webinars describing how to access non-insured health benefits. And while this does have some differences by province, what I'm going to do is give you a high level of what is covered at a federal level. And then we will be holding another webinar specific to the non-insured health benefits, where we'll drill down further by province. So you can see with eligibility, you have to be a resident of Canada, either a First Nations person who's registered under the Indian Act, and they become a status Indian, or an Inuk recognized by Inuit Land Claim Organization, or a child less than 18 months old whose parents is a registered First Nations person or recognized Inuk, or for some clients, a self-government or First Nations or Inuit Health Authority may be responsible for providing the health benefits. And to access the benefit coverage, you have to show the healthcare provider your client identification to confirm your eligibility with the program. The non-insured health benefits as of December 2018 recognizes nurses specialized in wound ostomy and continence, and it's listed as NSWOC and WOCC in brackets for certified, may make recommendations for ostomy supplies and fill out and sign the form for the benefit recommendation for medical supplies and equipment. They may also complete the required ostomy assessment form, and there are some differences by province. And again, if you want more information on this, just email office@nswoc.ca and we will send you some examples of the form. The NIHB recognizes that within their scope of practice that registered nurses have competency, skill, and knowledge to renew ostomy products, but only after initially prescribed or recommended by an NSWOC, a nurse practitioner, or an MD. So RNs can only renew versus be the first line recommenders. What I've done here is I wrote in 4 steps just to summarize what has to happen in order to process the reimbursement forms for NIHB for ostomy products. So first of all, you have to complete an assessment of the patient and determine what their needs are. Then you have to complete a template for benefit recommendation, medical supplies, and equipment, putting the client's first and last name, date of birth, client identification number, which is that unique number used to identify the client that's eligible to receive the benefits under the program. And I have the information here on the client ID number, which is a 10-digit number. And then there's a 3-digit band number, and then an alpha prefix followed by an 8-digit number, which is issued to certain registered First Nations and Inuit clients by NIHB. A health plan number is issued to recognize Inuit clients by the government of Northwest Territories and Nunavut. So again, a lot of background information to understand and a lot to learn, but this will be posted for your viewing. Step 3, you have to write the rationale for selecting the product. So you look at the goal of treatment based on best practice, and you need to really give a good explanation as to why you're putting the person into the ostomy appliances or ordering ancillary products. You need to name the medical supply or equipment recommended, the quantity that they need. And that's really important because if a supply plane only comes in at certain times during the year, you really have to be strategic and make sure that you're ordering in advance. The duration of the treatment or whatever they're using, and it may be permanent, period of validity of recommendations, the height, weight, and any other healthcare particulars. And then step 4 is the NSWOC's information. So you have to put your name, your job title, your designation and credentials, your RN license number, your contact information, and your signature and date. So all of this goes on to the form. And then if you're ordering supplies through NIHB, if you're ordering through a pharmacy, and this information was particular to Northwest Territories, but it kind of gives you an idea on how the products are ordered. So you have to give a detailed and accurate description of the product number, the quantity, and make sure that you have at least a maximum figured out for a year. And this allows the pharmacy to complete their portion of the general medical supplies and equipment form. And then it goes through looking at the costs and the markup and the total costs. And then you move down to a prior approval form that is filled out and then covered by, the coverage is done by NIHB. So there's quite a bit of paperwork, quite a few steps to work through. And in this presentation, I put a link directly to the section of the website that has all of this information. And I also wanted to point out that they have a medical supplies and equipment guide, and it's 13.0. And it has in 13.3 ostomy, and they identify which one-piece pouches are covered, the two-piece pouches are covered, and ancillary ostomy supplies. And then with that, they put the maximum draw, and because there is a maximum draw. And one of the concerns that I was talking to one of our Indigenous NSWOCs, and she said that we really need to be respectful of the amounts of products that are being used, because there are caps, and then they would have to go back and be re-reviewed. So you need to be aware of that. But the table is set up so you have your item number, the item name, who the prescriber is, the provider, the prior approval required, whether it is or not, and with ostomy it is, the recommended replacement guidelines, and any additional details. This one doesn't have any additional details, but some of them do have some side notes or caveats that you have to be aware of. So you can see here, one-piece drainable, colostomy, ileostomy, convex, you can draw 50 every 3 months. Whereas the one-piece closed-end colostomy convex pouch, you get 120 every 3 months. So this is all very clearly laid out for all types of ostomy supplies. This is the two-piece pouch system, and it's set up exactly the same way. And then this is the additional ostomy supply. So this goes through everything from moldable ring seals to the gel lubricant to belts, adapters, connectors, wipes, sprays. And you can see here's one caveat. You can only use the odor control concentrate for inside the pouch. Like they'll just put a note here if there's something they want you to be aware of. So you can see these are all the products that are available. And now I'm going to turn this over to Erin.
So another national program we have is the Federal Health Program, and that's largely towards protected persons, including resettled refugees and refugee claimants. These people cannot come into the country and be in an acute care facility or long-term care facility. And they're for people not eligible for provincial or other national types of funding sources. There are no restrictions on the type of ostomies covered, so both permanent types and temporary, and everything must be authorized by a physician or nurse practitioner. Access to supplies. Most people coming into Canada will actually automatically be registered into this program, so there's not so much an application to be submitted. However, access to supplies does require prior approval through an approved vendor. So they would go into somebody with the capacity to bill Medivie Blue Cross, which is similar to our other some of the other national programs like Veterans Affairs and Canadian Forces. There's no maximum coverage, per usual and customary fees in provinces and territories. There's not really a cap. So at any point when they flip over to being eligible for provincial coverage, then it would fall under the provincial programs. And I will now hand things over to Rosemary Hill.
Thank you, Erin. So I'm Rosemary Hill and I work at Lionsgate Hospital, and I'm an NSWOC for Vancouver Coastal Health. I'll have Kathy go ahead and advance the slides as we go through. So what I'd like to cover, because I'll go through fairly quickly because I really want to have a time of that we can answer questions and clarify anything in terms of what's been presented so far, because it's a lot of information. So I'm going to quickly go through the disability tax credit and the eligibility. I'm really pleased to talk about the collaboration that happened between Ostomy Canada Society and our organization. I'd like to also talk about how we can help our ostomy patients complete the form, because documentation and form completion, it can be tricky. And so there's some slides that show step-by-step how to do that. The signage section on the disability tax credit certificate, it must be signed by a physician or a nurse practitioner. But currently, between Ostomy Canada and our NSWOC Canada, we are working together to try to petition the government to consider adding the signature of an NSWOC, so that an NSWOC can complete the certificate for the disability tax credit. I've also been finding with some of my patients, when I talk to them about the disability tax credit, they don't know much about it, and they've had their ostomy for 10 years or more. And I'll say, it might be helpful if you include a cover letter. And so I've developed a template cover letter, and I'll show you an example of that. Also, as a reminder, there is a portion of the disability tax credit that is around the registered disability tax savings plan, so that if you do qualify for the disability tax credit, that's something also that you can investigate, the actual savings plan. Okay. So what is the disability tax credit? It's a non-refundable tax credit that helps persons with disabilities or their supporting people reduce the amount of income tax they may have to pay. So who qualifies? Well, it's our ostomy patients who've had their stoma for 12 months, or they have a permanent ostomy. And I've included the link, which is also at the end of our presentation, for resources. And so you go to CRA and you type in disability tax credit, and you will find the access to the form. I think to emphasize that eligibility criteria, they spell it out for you very clearly as to who is eligible. And I would encourage people to go to that information as well. So in other words, does this disability affect you 100%? And when you have an ostomy, you do have it 100%. And so therefore it's important to include some of that language when you're completing the documentation. And we'll see that later in future slides. I'd like to say the disability tax credit, to me, it's so helpful and so powerful that I'm really glad during my time when I was working with the NSWOC, or at that time the CAT, our program, I was the president, but there was an ad hoc committee with Ostomy Canada that was chaired by Ann Durkee. And I really feel, for me, it was a real privilege to participate on that committee and learn so much from people who have an ostomy and how to proceed with completing the form. With this committee, we opted to create a pamphlet to guide people simply step by step how to apply for the disability tax credit. And currently, I would encourage all NSWOC to have this pamphlet in your outpatient clinic readily available, because there's so many things you're sharing with your patient who has an ostomy. And you might forget that extra piece because they've got a lot on their plate. So I would just encourage you to have those pamphlets handy, and you can reach out to Ostomy Canada to retrieve some of those pamphlets. And over a period of probably 12 months, we went back and forth and collaborated and pulled this pamphlet together. I think my next slide shows you the committee members, with Anne taking a strong leadership role and guiding us through, keeping us on task and to complete this pamphlet. But what I like about this committee was it was interdisciplinary. interdisciplinary, I would say. There was a pharmacist, we had people from various chapters from the East Coast, the West Coast, NSWOCs, and of course, Kathy Harley, our CEO of NSWOC Canada. I think a huge piece, once the pamphlet was printed, is that we had to market that pamphlet, and we had to reach out to various places to make sure everybody was aware of the disability tax credit. And that means including physicians' offices. And so there was a lovely slide called Did You Know? And that was placed in journals, both physician, nursing, a variety of journals right across the country. It was uploaded to websites as well. Because sometimes we find with physicians, when patients would go and say, you know, I think I'm eligible for the disability tax credit, some of the physicians it would take them a moment or two to think their patient was so integrated in all the things they were doing that they didn't necessarily think of them as having a disability. But clearly, CRA recognizes people who have an ostomy of 12 months or more or permanent ostomy as a disability, and they're certainly eligible for the disability tax credit. And so there was a broad, wide distribution, far more now than 15,000. So next slide. I want to, again, I believe that committee is still ongoing. I apologize, I've been less than participating in my, now that I'm no longer as the president, but every now and then I try to jump in and touch base with that ad hoc committee and let them know some of the things more that I'm learning about the disability tax credit as I help my patients complete the form. So once you've downloaded the form, there's one that you can just print off, or there's a fillable one that you can just complete as you go. It's a PDF. And then there's some key spots I want to take your attention to. So on the very first page, you're going to indicate if you've had your ostomy, this is again, remembering if you've had your ostomy for several years or more, and perhaps you may have not claimed the disability tax credit before, then you would like to make sure that in section 3, you say, yes, I would like the CRA to apply this to my previous returns. So more recently, I've had some patients who've had their ostomy for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, even 50 years. And so we have ticked the box in section 3 that we've said, yes, I want the CRA to adjust my tax forms. I would like to share with you that some of those patients have had good conversation dialogue with the CRA. They've received a letter back, they've been approved, they've appreciated the cover letter, and they've received a check. Some in the $8,000 realm, some in the $12,000 realm, some even $15,000 because they have had their ostomy for 10 years or more, and the CRA will backdate at least 10 years. Next slide. So I want to take you to the form, and this is the part that is, I find, a little bit confusing, because as we're looking at this 6-page document, 5 of which of those pages you have to complete something, you sometimes feel uncomfortable leaving that first page and not completing any of the boxes. So you can leave those boxes empty, or with some of my patients, because it makes them feel better, we say no to vision, no to speaking, no to hearing, no to walking. Next page. But here we are at the section called eliminating. And this is where we do want to tick yes, and we want to indicate the year that we had our ostomy. We'll, again, at the rest of that page, you could feel quite comfortable leaving those other sections blank, or if it makes you feel better to complete it, I've had some of my patients go no for feeding, no for dressing, and moving on to the next page. This is a key page. This is where your page 4, by the way, you're going to leave it blank. So now we're on page 5. and we want to include a statement. And I have to emphasize the words of Ann Durkee, where she says, you know, less is better. And I want you to feel free to capture the statements that I've included on that slide. And you would say, I, put your name there, have a permanent or irreversible, and you would talk about your, whether it's an ileostomy, urostomy, or colostomy, and I am markedly restricted in eliminating. And that's the language that the CRA refers to when we're talking about eligibility. I spend an inordinate amount of time to personally manage my, and you would put again your ileostomy, colostomy, or urostomy. And that language of inordinate amount of time, that is again the language from the CRA. Because ultimately you do have that ostomy 100% of the time. And therefore, that is why you qualify. And then that second paragraph is there. I have had an ostomy utilizing a pouching system for a continuous period of time since, and you can include your year, and that this situation is not going to change in the future. And this next part is important, the duration, that yes, you have had it, but no, it is not at this time. It is not reversible. It is permanent. So those are those red X's I want to guide you when you do the duration. And finally, your next page, after page 3, keep going forward, Kathy. And that's right. There's a couple, I've also included a few other statements, but I have to tell you, my previous slide, that's my favorite, keeping it short, to the point, using the language that's in the CRA. Next slide. And here now is the certification part. Your physician or NP has to indicate how long they've known you for. They're going to tick their designation, and then they're going to sign, include their signature, print their name, the date, time, and then on that last page, page 6, you're going to look at where you're going to send it to, depending on which province you live in. And so I'll usually highlight the section for BC, and my patients know to send it into the Winnipeg Tax Center. Next page, slide. This is a sample cover letter. I really find this, I think, has been really helpful for all of my patients so far. I am not aware of any of my patients, when I've assisted them to complete the disability tax credit, I have guided them and helped them through creation of a cover letter. So I provide this sample for you to feel free to use in your practice, in your outpatient clinic, and show it as an example. Clearly, I don't think there's anybody with a PHN of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I did try to make it generic. Next slide. So this part, the disability savings plan, I'll be honest, I'm not as familiar with it, but I felt it was really important to mention it because I think it's something that you really need to explore, and there's some caveats with it, and that you should consider opening an RDSP if you have a long-term disability and are under the age of 60, a Canadian resident with a social insurance number, and looking for a long-term savings plan. You know, I'm really appreciative of the people that are on this webinar tonight. There are some from Ostomy Canada, and I'm really hoping too that they can chime in on any extra information that I have glossed over, and they might have some kernels, nuggets around the savings plan as well. But I think the disability tax credit, it's been such a wonderful thing to be familiar with, and I gained familiarity through working with that ad hoc committee. Interestingly enough, through the 2020, the CRA, it was decided by the federal government to offer support to those who qualify for the disability tax credit, and they were given COVID support. They were given a $600 check to help them, as they too have to manage some of the extra steps involved as they manage their ostomy. And so I appreciate the federal government stepping up to those who have a disability. And there was a $600 check, I think it was later this year, that those who qualified for DC received. I think we're coming to a summary slide. So I guess my desire, my keenness, first of all, I would like anybody who's interested in me sending out template letters or even my sample completed disability tax credit form. I am happy to do that. And I'm at rosemary.hill@vch.ca. Always you want to confirm that eligibility with your patient, that they've had the ostomy for 12 months or more, that you have those disability pamphlets available in your outpatient clinic, you're familiar with the application process, and that you've got some templates for the cover letter. Now I know we're short. Oh, I just got us under the wire. It's 5 o'clock. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Erin.
Yeah, thank you, Rosemary, and thank you to Erin. And again, thank you to everybody who's been hanging in. And I went into the Q&A, and we'll take a few questions. And the first one was Carissa Lux. Thank you very much for additional information about the Manitoba Ostomy Program. She said, we're fortunate to be able to provide 100% coverage for cecostomies and wounds that require pouching. Clients do not purchase supplies, and so no reimbursement is required. Manitoba Health directly covers all costs for basic ostomy supplies, and accessories such as support belts, deodorant drops, etc. are not covered. So thank you, Carissa, for that additional information. We also have a question here from Jose Quan Vang. Could you let me know if you have applied and you were denied, can you reapply? I've had my permanent, the question.
I threw a quick answer in there too, Kathy, because
okay. So so if you've applied, can you reapply? Rosemary, do you have information on that?
most all of my patients that I know of have received it. And so what I want to know is some of it is the language in the form. And I want to put it forth that I would like to assist this person. That's why I put my email down to that form completion, and absolutely they need to reapply. Interestingly enough, Kathy, I had a patient just tonight. I was chatting with her, and she's had her ostomy for 30 years. And so once again, we were talking about other things. I said, oh, by the way, have you applied for the disability tax credit? She said, oh, yes. And she said, for the first while, every 3 years, I was asked to renew the application. I did that twice. And then after that, I've no longer had to complete the application process. So I think that's just good to know that occasionally CRA will say, could you please renew the your disability tax credit information? But I'm finding that happens a couple of times, and then thereafter, maybe every 10 years or so, though, CRA will reach out.
Okay, very good to know. So we don't have any other questions. Are there any?
There is a question actually in the chat. I think for the tax credit, Rosemary, will they tax credit cecostomies?
I'm not sure. I think, though, this is where that cover letter is important. And I also think the language of the inordinate amount of time that you're using and your pouching system, if there is one, I think, again, I have to encourage you, whatever province you're in, to reach out to your local nurse specialized in wound ostomy care, and she would, or he would be able to help you complete it with the right language. And don't forget, you can go to our website and pop in your postal code, and you can find an NSWOC that lives near you. Correct, Kathy, on that?
Yes, yeah, it's called Find an NSWOC. It's a search engine on the main website.
Okay.
And then can families with kids with disabilities get the tax credit as well?
Children who have an ostomy, I would say absolutely.
Yes.
And in fact, the form is designed so that you as the parent fill out the second section versus the first section as if you were the patient. So the first section is you as the patient. Second section would be you as the parent. So I would absolutely recommend that.
Ann Durkee has a couple other things to add to the DTC. I'm just checking. Troy is going to unmute Ann so she can comment.
Oh,
okay.
Wonderful.
Ann, you can go ahead. Your mic is open.
She probably
You'll
has
just have to
unmute
unmute yourself, Anne.
Okay, you're good to go. Well, thank you, gals. This has been a great presentation. And Rosemary, just great comments to you. You started with us in 2017 and you're still going. Really appreciate it. Just a couple things I'd like to mention. The question just come up that I did notice. If you have children or you can definitely claim for a DTC on their behalf. And also, if your wife has or your husband has the ostomy and want to apply for a DTC, if they have no income, then their spouse can apply on behalf of them and use their income to get the DTC because they're supporting their spouse. So that's just to clarify that. Another thing, Rosemary, you had mentioned about make sure that you tell them that you have a temporary ostomy. It really doesn't matter anymore. Over a year ago, they have allowed temporary ostomies to go through. However, you are obligated that when that becomes a reversal and you go back to a normal life, you are obligated to inform CRA. Because if you don't and you draw that credit for a few years, you're going to owe the government that much money. So you have to be very honest about it. But the temporary, as long as you've had it for 1 year.
Yeah, greater than 12 months. Right.
Yeah, within 12 months, then you can claim for that temporary. And before, when we first started the committee, temporaries weren't included in it, but it is now.
Right.
Yeah, and you had mentioned 100%. I had looked up yesterday, and the government still hasn't changed that to 100%. It's 90%. I think maybe they might account for when we take the ostomy off.
Okay.
Yeah, we've always kind of looked at that. It's always been that way, and it still is. So.
Okay, greater than 90%.
I really appreciate it. I like to see this promoted.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I put greater than 12 months on my slide, but I think I need to add the word temporary. So greater than 12 months, and if it's temporary, that's fine. Good.
Yeah,
thank you, Anne.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. We also have a comment and question from Terry Schroeder. What do you do if your physician does not believe you have a disability even after filling out the form correctly? I'm going to jump in on that. I've been doing some education with our general surgeons here, but on behalf of the patient, I reach out to that particular physician, but I also think they need a copy of that nice little pamphlet. And so, because it's so clear regarding that eligibility, but I think it's an opportunity to talk with that physician and give a little bit more information, because sometimes there is a bit of hesitancy. And I have heard that before, but I think just a simple going to the website, not that you want to tell your physician to go to the website, but rather it's another voice rather than the patient's voice. So if the patient, again, has their local NSWOC, reach out to that physician. I think it's a great opportunity for education and advocacy for the patient, you know. And do you have any other ideas on that?
Am I still unmuted, Troy?
Yep.
It's been going on for as long as we've had this committee and got this promoted. We really tried hard to educate physicians, and either they don't have the time or it's somebody else's concern. I've had them that I've even written a letter to the physician on behalf of that patient, because they really tried so hard to get the DTC. I've also had physicians in Nova Scotia hear about the DTC and contact me for information because they were interested and wanted to help their patient. So it's the same old story that, you know, do they have time or do they want to take time? So it ends up on NSWOCs like Rosemary and many others in Ostomy Canada to promote it. And we've really tried and we will continue to do that. I don't have any answers for that because Rosemary, you know, you've
Yeah,
gone.
I wonder also,
there.
Anne, I wonder, you know, there's also a possibility of people going to the nurse practitioner website and they may find a local nurse practitioner who would be, of course, eligible to sign. And Kathy, I don't know if you want to jump in and say what the latest is in terms of the advocacy of trying to get the NSWOC to be able to sign on that form. That will really be exciting when that happens.
Yeah, so I mean, we had the one face-to-face meeting with the Canadian Revenue Agency that you and Anne participated in as well. And we followed up with a couple of letters with the Disability Tax Credit Committee. And we're on their radar and we're ready to write them again until we get some action. So the goal is to get NSWOCs as authorizers, and we're working on it.
And to confirm, it can be any physician or nurse practitioner. It does not need to be the surgeon for the disability tax credit form.
That is correct. Yeah. They're general practitioner. I've also had their surgeon. I've had nurse practitioners.
Okay, so we're now 10 minutes after the hour. I don't think there's any other questions. Oh, yes, there is. Can we get our GP to sign the form, or does it have to be? Oh, yeah. Okay, so that was answered, and I think that is it. So I would like to thank everybody for their participation. Please email office@nswoc.ca. Let us know how you like the webinar. Any feedback is appreciated. Any information is appreciated. And we will be posting the recording of this presentation as well as the presentation so that you can get the links and the information. And we wish you all the very best as you navigate helping to get your patients additional funding for their ostomy. And if you do need assistance in the future, we are here, and the joint advocacy committee between Ostomy Canada Society and Nurses Specialized in Wound Ostomy Continence is here to serve you. So we look forward to hearing from you and wish everyone the very best. And
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Rosemary.